Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and this is a breakdown of Agatha All Along Episode 3, Through Many Miles of Tricks and Trials, an episode that will forever live in infamy as the first and perhaps only instance in which our Dark Lord and absent savior was finally named in the MCU.
An agent of Mephisto.
Ah! Hearing this sent me spiraling through a state of euphoria. But now that I've seen beyond the cosmic event horizon, my eyes have dilated to catch countless details, references, and clues in this episode. So I'm gonna break it down scene by scene for everything that you might have missed. And I wanna hear all of your thoughts, your theories, and your questions every Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific time on the Break Room channel, where Jessica, Brandon, Evan, Zach, and I will be streaming live in a weekly Agatha Roundtable Q&A. Subscribe to the Break Room and let's keep the Mephisto train chugging along over there. So this is the episode where we get a sense of this show's episodic structure, with each trial along the Witch's Road operating kind of like its own escape room, based on some pop culture reference of sisterhood and witchcraft. Showrunner Jack Schaefer said that this really came from the original trials witches would have to go through, including a fire trial, a water trial. We open with our coven on the Witch's Road.
It's exactly how I pictured it.
Yes. Suits you.
An interesting compliment coming from Agatha, and I think she's talking about not just the teen's goth vibe, but the DIY nature of his approach to witchcraft. The production design of the Witch's Road set was all done practically, and you can see in behind the scenes featurettes that some trees designed to illuminate colors like teal were really bent in a way to kind of look like a hooded ghost. Mary Lavanos also talked about how they used miniatures for the background locations that were seen from a distance. It's all done to evoke the practical nature of Victor Fleming's 1939 The Wizard of Oz, which used a lot of the same techniques. These witches note that the Salem 7 chased Agatha down here, but not all of them. But as Agatha walks ahead, Catherine Hahn does this kind of arm flap gesture that kind of makes it look like she's calling them chickens. Jennifer Kale says that she's gonna call the teens' parents, and he says he's 100% certain they're asleep. Could we take that to mean they're dead? It's just, he keeps talking about parents, but you know, we don't really know what's going on with his teen. Sharon says,
Okay, I am a member of the Westview Historical Society.
So Westview has a historical society, and I'm gonna go out on a limb to say that Sarah Proctor might be another member of that group. A theory that I posed last week is that when Agnes went down to the library to talk to the librarian version, Dottie, when Agatha was still in her Mayor of Easttown spell, that since all of Agatha's movements seem to really be confined to her and her neighbors' houses, that might have actually just been Sarah's house. And Sarah Proctor, with a name dating back to real-world Salem witch trials, could have possessed the Darkhold in her personal book collection in her house. Actress Emma Caulfield Ford was in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and this talk of a failed public transit system beneath Westview, a town that never seemed like it had more than a few thousand people living in it, reminds me of an old WandaVision theory that I had, that there might be a Hellmouth under Westview, the way Sunnydale High School had a Hellmouth beneath it in Buffy. Like, Sharon is definitely talking about some Jordan Peele Us tunnel beneath Westview, and I want to know what's really down there, and what that beekeeper who we saw in WandaVision episode 2 and then in WandaVision episode 4 was really crawling through. Also, why Westview, New Jersey? Like, why did Vision choose this town for him and Wanda? And how far was Agatha when she first sensed Wanda's hex forming? And look, I know the show is implying that witches and witchy people are like everywhere in any 3-mile radius, but like Lilia Calderu, Jennifer Kale, Lorna Wu's daughter Alice Wu are pretty high profile witches to all be within just a few miles of where the Scarlet Witch caused her big stir. And I just think it's possible that Vision might have chosen this town because his Mind Stone and its divine wisdom sensed a wellspring of magic in this town in New Jersey that would just end up being important to helping Wanda unlock her true self. And speaking of Agatha's run-in with Dottie, aka Sarah, and what she was really doing there, Scarlet Witch Updates on Twitter pointed out a promo shot showing the moment that Agatha kicks Teen out of the chair, but in the real world, outside of the spell. So that tells us that in some future episode, we're gonna revisit the events of episode 1, but see it from the point of view of Teen and the other neighbors, including probably Sarah. Now, Agatha, hilariously, still cannot remember Mrs. Hart's actual name.
Hey, she has a name. It's Mrs. Hart.
Now, for this, I actually blame Wanda's spell for just being that effective on Agatha's mind that, like any great TV show, we don't even care what the actor's name is, we just know them as the character they played. Teen encourages this coven to embrace the craft in witchcraft.
Well, I'll be. Someone's put a sigil on that boy.
So in this instance, it looks like Joe Locke's mouth moves even less, like one, but definitely not more than 2 syllables, which could fit Billy because the Lee of Billy doesn't require the jaw to drop a second time. Like think Billy, like the Lee is just kind of slipping in there under the chin. Definitely check out my video with all the evidence that he's probably Billy Kaplan, but there's also probably a bit more to the story. Jack Schaefer explained more of the decision behind this sigil to the rap, saying for the aesthetic on his mouth, the original idea was that it was a redaction bar, because that is what the spell is. It's something being held back in a manner that is, it's a spell that's kind of clumsy. Like a more sophisticated spell would just hide the whole thing, but it sort of shows its amateurness. So the original idea that I wrote was that it was a redaction bar that sort of had the sound that goes with it. So by describing the spell as clumsy and amateur, it kind of suggests that the teen might have placed it on himself. Schaefer also described the sigil as sans serif, as a contrast to the serif witchcraft of the more experienced witches. In like typography, it's just a curved little tail that goes in certain typed fonts. Like Times New Roman is a serif font, Arial is a sans serif font. The teen asks Agatha,
why would someone want to hide me? Look.
And then Agatha literally pushes Teen behind her body to hide him from the point of view of the camera angle. Agatha claims this type of sigil magic is beneath her, but I think she knows or at least suspects more of the reason why Teen might have this sigil on his mouth than she's letting on. Agatha goes down the line to remind each of these witches of their wants. For Jen, it's to unbind. For Lilia, it's to reverse her fortunes. And then for Alice, it's to learn what really happened to her mom. And it's very Wizard of Oz in the way that the wizard goes down the line to award each member of that group their prizes. But Sharon's not there, and she nearly gets swallowed by the mud under a tree that's right off the path. And Agatha has to explain that the lyric, I stray not from the path, means literally to never step off the road, which makes me think that these fallen leaves that cover the path and seem to change color as they go further down the road based off of trailer footage might have a kind of floor is lava logic to them that protects the witches from the muck of the rest of this forest. They find their first trial, a beachside mansion.
Maybe this is the end.
That would be such a bummer.
This house will end up being the end for Sharon. And after Teen responds, notice that Agatha side eyes him for a beat, carefully watching this kid who seems to be enjoying this trial more than the rest of them are. Lilia observes the carving on the door matching the phases of the moon, and Teen sees the circle in the middle matching the craters visible on our moon, meaning that this house represents the full moon. And he says the water phase. Now, we've been seeing a lot of lunar imagery in the closing credits, and I even speculated in our July trailer breakdown that the trials might actually correspond to the phases of the moon. So that's one theory I got right out of probably 100 wrong, but there are varying correlations online between the phases of the moon, which are new moon, waxing crescent, first quarter, waxing gibbous, full moon, waning gibbous, third quarter, waning crescent, and the 4 elements of water, fire, air, and earth. I've seen some sites even saying new moon is really the water phase, but full moon also makes sense because that's when the moon is slightly closest to the earth at perigee, and tides are higher than normal as a result. And notice that as soon as the door closes, inside the 6 of them suddenly shift into this preppy country club attire, like straight out of a Nora Ephron movie, or in this case, straight out of Big Little Lies. The HBO series even gets referenced if you listen closely to the background.
Have you seen Huge Tiny Lies?
Yeah, they say huge tiny lies, which is like Big Little Lies. Now, I don't think there's any witchcraft in Big Little Lies, unless you consider Meryl Streep's acting a form of sorcery, because it is that enchanting, I'll admit. But it is a show with a bunch of white women and 1 black woman, and then there is a dead body at the end of season 1. But I'll say, I think of Deborah Jo Rupp in this episode as being kind of the season 2 Meryl Streep scene stealer. You'll also notice that the moment we go inside, the aspect ratio has changed from the more cinematic widescreen outside on the Witch's Road to a more TV, HBO, common taller ratio inside. WandaVision would often shift aspect ratio to signal a changing TV format aesthetic. They also note that they all still have their amulets. And let's look closely at these because you can get them at a Hot Topic apparently. Jennifer Kale's looks like a potion bottle. Lilia's necklace, according to the jewelry artist who designed it, called this the Sun Tarot card in silver, saying that it represents love, joy, satisfaction, accomplishment, and success. Before I said it might be the Queen of Cups tarot card, but that tarot card, according to Jess, does have a sun that's behind the figure. Alice's, to me, looks like a heart, which might connect to the 3 of Swords tarot card. Rio's necklace, which we don't see in this episode because Rio's not in this episode, is the dagger that she carries, and this specific curved dagger is also carried by Death in the Death tarot card. And we have some amazing designs that are inspired by Agatha all along, available at nerdriot.shop, including this really cool Witch's Road shirt. We have a Blood Moon shirt. These are the best way to support what we're doing here at New Rockstars. Please grab one of those. It's a great holiday gift option, nerdriot.shop. Sharon says,
Oh my God! Bury me in that kitchen!
kitchen.
More foreshadowing. That kitchen will literally be the room where she expires. Teen finds a card on the mantle. The Witch's Road cordially invites you to the first trial. And there's a painting behind it over the mantle showing two women floating in a pool, or maybe it's just the same woman mirrored in the surface of the water. Agatha says,
"What is this? A wedding? Please God, not a baby shower."
If Agatha sacrificed her baby boy for the Darkhold, it makes sense that she wouldn't want to be around babies. And sure enough, this episode will end with her crawling toward a baby crib. Jen reads the riddle on the back of the card.
My age has value. I'm no fun alone. I mess with your mind. My tricks are well known.
Agatha says it sounds like a witch. Jen says it sounds like Agatha. And Agatha's like, but then Sharon realizes it's wine. They find a bottle of Spanish Red Reina. 2016, in episode 1 of WandaVision, a bottle of Maison du Mépris had all of us thinking that this was going to be a House of M story. Here we have Reina Rioja, and it's just like a type of red wine. But you know, if you were to change the spelling to R-E-I-N-A, Rioja, you might get like some kind of version of Red Queen. Jen warns Teen to watch us back with Agatha.
Did you know she traded her own child for the Book of the Damned?
So this confirms it. The reason the library card attached to the corpse belonged to a library book, a book whose first letters spelled out Darkhold, written by Andrew Ugo, which is an anagram for Wundagore, is that the corpse was a projection of Agatha's sacrifice, the child sacrifice that Jen hinted at in episode 2. Agatha's son, Nicholas Scratch, in exchange for the Darkhold. The episode ends by showing Agatha reliving her memory of finding the Darkhold in Nicholas's baby crib. This actually could have been what pissed off the Salemite witches that much.
You stole knowledge above your age and station. You practiced the darkest of magic.
They simply bent to my power.
Additionally, if you look back at WandaVision, it gives some context to one odd moment in episode 5 that was never resolved or explained.
You can fix anything, Mom. Fix it dead.
What? No. You can do that?
And the fact that in that moment, Agatha was cradling a corpse in her arms as she was asking that makes me now think she might have been dwelling on Nicholas in that moment. In fact, maybe the previous time Agatha went down the Witch's Road, she was trying to get her son back. Now, Jen seems to be hinting that there is some trace of Nicholas Scratch possessing the teen. For now, I'm gonna stick with the theory that I posed in Monday's video that he's Billy Kaplan of Eastview, future Wiccan, and that he might have been in that car accident in the near death in Westview that we see under Joe Locke's name in the credits of every episode, an article dated December 14th, 2023, and that he was only saved by some spirit possessing his nearly dead body. That could have been Nicholas Scratch. We get another clue in this episode pointing to this possibility in just a bit. But we've arrived at the moment. Jen goes on to say the words that might have been written just for us.
They say no one really knows what happened to him. They say he might be dead. Others say he might be a demon or an agent of Mephisto.
They said it! They actually said it! It doesn't feel real! And I don't care if this is the only time the MCU utters this name, or if it was just thrown into the script as like a one-time pity gesture to nerds like us. We'll take it! But okay, before we start severing our head off with wire and hailing payment in a treehouse, some real talk. I would be surprised if this show actually links Nicholas Scratch to Mephisto if they come out and say it right here in episode 3. If they were gonna do Mephisto here, I think the writing would just more cautiously hint at it in other ways. Unless they're gonna still do Mephisto and they're actually gonna surprise us with like a big cast cameo. Like maybe they're saying his name here and then they're going to reveal that's who Rio Vidal actually is. We should also note that there is room in the cast billing for another high profile name like Sacha Baron Cohen, who has been rumored to be playing Mephisto in Ironheart. Like all 3 episodes so far, closing credits have shown the main cast members one after the other with corresponding images, but then after Ali An, there are 2 open slots, the pentagram over the map of Westview, and then the girl in the Halloween mask, followed by with Dover Joe Rupp, with Patti LuPone, and Aubrey Plaza, or at least Aubrey Plaza was in episode 1 on that tarantula shot. And the next 2 episodes, the tarantula shot has just been empty. Now, when it comes to cast order, that's something negotiated by agents in these actors' contracts. The lead star is always first billed, and then after that, you have the other smaller names, but the biggest names after the lead come at the very end, preceded by the word with. And. Hey, it could just be that Jen is referring to the common historical associations with the name Nicholas Scratch with the devil. Also, when Marvel Comics introduced Nicholas Scratch as Agatha's son and leader of Salem's 7 and Fantastic Four number 185 in 1977, that's really where they derived the name. But also, Nicholas Scratch's most recent appearance in Marvel Comics was back in 2006's Marvel Knights 4 numbers 26 and 27, where Nicholas Scratch resurrects and poses as Doctor Strange with a plan to summon Shuma Gorath to Earth. Franklin and Valeria Richards banish Nicholas Scratch to Hell, and in Hell, hell, Nicholas Scratch agrees to become an agent of Mephisto in a coming war. And we never really hear from Nicholas Scratch after that. So we'll see if Mephisto comes up again, but for now, I think it goes without saying, Agents of Mephisto, spin that off as a Disney Plus series and let me cameo in it, please. But as I rewatch this scene, which I have like a dozen times now, I'm increasingly interested in Teen's reactions. He starts off in denial, but he gets increasingly tense as Jen speculates, and when Mephisto comes up, there's something in his eyes that looks downright hostile. As Jen walks away, notice his hand claws angrily or anxiously, but there's something going on there. This could all just be the Teen grappling with these uncomfortable truths that he's learning about his idol, but I think there's some part of him feeling threatened about being exposed. Like there's something that changes in Teen after this scene. He gets more urgent, more forward. You know, I can't think of the last day where I wasn't online in some way, for work, for my personal life, for entertainment. I am online all the time. And I bet you are too, like you are right now.
Yep.
And that's why it's so important to make sure that you are browsing safely and securely, keeping yourself safe from scams, malware, and phishing attacks. For me, that means using NordVPN. There's lots of VPNs on the market, but Nord is the best of the best. Nord lets you choose your browsing location online so streaming services can't block you from watching your favorite shows, and it's the fastest VPN on the planet. And sure, most VPNs have some kind of online threat protection, but NordVPN's Threat Protection Pro checks the files you download for malware and will even check links you click to protect you from phishing scams. NordVPN even has a built-in ad blocker to make your browsing experience as smooth as possible. Even when you don't have an active VPN connection, NordVPN stops many types of web trackers to protect your privacy. You should get NordVPN. You'll be glad you did. If you head to nordvpn.com/newrockstars, you can get 4 months extra on a 2-year plan. And since Nord has a 30-day money-back guarantee, it's risk-free to try. Once again, that's nordvpn.com/newrockstars for 4 months extra on a 2-year plan with a 30-day money-back guarantee, or just click the link in the description below. Thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. Agatha pours the wine and Sharon just downs hers. Behind Sharon is a painting of a woman in a red dress that's wading out into the sea, maybe offering herself to the sea to just end it all. 30 minutes are now on the timer, and Agatha says,
So, 2 harbingers of doom?
no, this is not a Dr. Doom reference. They cheers, and Teen notice Pantomime's having a wine glass just to join in the fun, and he asks,
Can I have some?
You bet.
While the others all say no, Agatha says, you bet. If she is projecting Nicholas Scratch on this kid, she is totally okay with this youth endangering himself. So notice that we see these women drink and finish their wine in this order. Sharon chugs her initial pour immediately and then refills and then finishes that before we see anyone else finish. That second pour is the pour that was going to go to the Teen. So in a way, she was kind of his sin eater. Alice finishes second. Jen, we see having drank some of her wine, but then just sniffs it. Similar with Lily Calderu, who's just kind of like nursing hers, but then Agatha pours her wine out in the plant. And that's the order that we see the effects take over these witches. T notices Alice's tattoo. Alice says that she got it in Colorado when her mother Lorna Wu was playing Red Rocks. So the Red Rocks Amphitheater is one of the country's biggest and most famous outdoor venues, rivaling the Hollywood Bowl. It's rumored to be haunted. There's a witch of Red Rocks and even a hatchet lady of Red Rocks who appears at the highest point of the rock peaks, and it's described as headless. Teen recognizes the tattoo as something gained to ward off spells. The outer ring are Chinese ideographs, but the ones in the inner rings we couldn't make out. Overall, I think this might be a similar kind of rune as what Agatha and Wanda used in their final battle to draw the line of where dark magic can and cannot be. Alice says that the trauma with her mother happened at age 13 for her, and Teen says this.
Well, it happened to me at 13 too.
So since Teen is now 16 years old, and this show is set 3 years after WandaVision in 2026, he might be referring to that near-death in Westview headline that was dated December 14th, 2023. It kind of seems like after Jen called him out, Teen is now shifting to being more open, more forward, and trying to endear himself to the other witches. Like, notice how later he starts to turn on Agatha and call her out for cheating.
Drink. Fine. Then I will.
So Agatha's wine glass refills automatically, kind of like the spell Doctor Strange places on Thor's mug that automatically refills with beer in the Doctor Strange post-credit scene and in the scene in Thor Ragnarok. That was a practical effect at the time. And now, which is really fun, when Alion picks up the glass and they cut to a new angle where there must be a concealed hose running up her arm. I love that kind of stuff. And the fact that they have to drink it all reminds me of Regulus Black's spell and Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince hiding a fake locket, Horcrux, at the base of the bowl with a potion that must be drunk to completion. And it really took a toll on Michael Gambon. He was like, I don't want to go. Hey, you wanna know something crazy? I just learned that Jared Harris is Richard Harris's son. Jared Harris, Lane Price from Mad Men, was just calling out the new HBO Harry Potter show like, why do you need to do it? The other one was perfect. It's just crazy how everyone's related. Anyway, so Sharon's face puffs up to a Botox infection nightmare. Same for Alice and Jen and Lilia. And Lilia don't seem to mind the change, but the swelling goes back down and Jen identifies the poison as Alewife's revenge. So an alewife is a fish, a herring. There was a very obscure X-Men character named Alewife from 2011's Shame Itself, a fish mutant who pops up briefly in a dream reality created by Professor X to test the X-Men. I don't know, Alewife's revenge kind of reminds me of like the phrase a red herring, right? Like just kind of a tedious distraction that distracts you from the real threat. Agatha cracks the window glass, which creates a dilemma later when the floodwater uses this weakened pressure point to break through, making me wonder, would that floodwater have been as much of a threat if Agatha hadn't cracked the glass? Teen forces her to drink and she chokes it down. Sharon says,
Let him breathe. Please.
She seems to be returning to the moment in WandaVision episode 1 in the Hex when Mr. Hart was choking at dinner time.
Stop it. Stop it.
But what's odd is Sharon is now using different words. She's not repeating stop it while laughing and crying. She's saying, Wanda, I'm begging you, let him breathe. This could be what Sharon was really saying in her heart in that moment, or it could be a prayer that Sharon said later on when her husband, Mr. Davis, actually died in reality recently, as she was telling Agatha about in her garden. And if that's the case, that would be so sad that she prayed to the Scarlet Witch to return to Westview to help her the way she envisioned helped them in the Hex. And Agatha in this moment might feel a twinge of jealousy that a Westview resident sought Wanda for help, a witch who's clearly hated but still viewed by some as a hero who could help them. Like Agatha might be learning that there's another way for a witch to be. Jen lists off ingredients for an antidote.
I need frankincense and the gut of a eusocial insect.
Frankincense, one of the gifts given to baby Jesus upon his birth. It's a resin produced by trees and used in perfumes and incense. And it's just interesting that Agatha finds her baby in a kind of manger. And remember, she referenced Senor Scratchy as playing baby Jesus in a child's play. Now, the gut of a eusocial insect. Eusocial means a species that organizes socially like bees and ants. So that's how they got honey. And then a corpse that's been decaying for at least 30 million years. They're referring to zooplankton and petroleum products. Jen and Lilia find Jen's kale products, assuming that they contain petroleum despite her claims. And Lilia suddenly says this.
Try to save Agatha.
Yes, I love this plan.
Okay, so these outbursts seem to be part of Lilia's divination. Her sincere, I love you guys, earlier might have been another example of that. Is this something Agatha's mother, Evanora, said when Agatha was younger, and Agatha has held this guilt with her since she betrayed Evanora on the night of her trial? Was Evanora actually trying to spare her daughter's life, and that's something she said to the other Salemites? So in this part of the episode, Alice, Jen, and Lilia all hallucinate their greatest traumas, their greatest fears. So let's take each character one by one. Alice is initially frozen in place while her reflections on the mirrors on the other side of her create this infinity effect. We saw this with Stephen Grant and Moon Knight in the museum bathroom in the first episode of that series. Alice hallucinates a steam room, and the steam becomes smoke in the dressing room of her mother, singer Lorna Wu, who flips a lighter. She says,
Your grandmother died today.
and then Lorna drinks poison. Lorna believes the women of this family share a blood curse, which reminded me of It Follows, in that when the person who gave you the curse is found by the entity now shifts direction to come after you. Final Destination works in a similar logical framework. Meanwhile, Jen's vision is triggered with this really cool shot. She goes to get Eye of Newt, aka mustard seed, and without the editor cutting, we stay in this one shot where she walks into the pantry, the camera pans to follow her, and then pans back to follow her into the kitchen, and the lighting has practically changed to be blue and aquatic, like Jen herself is underwater, and the doctor is now standing there. This whole idea of, hey, nothing to miss, shift the camera, return back to show a startling reveal. This effect is something that we've seen a lot in domestic horror cinema. Like in Poltergeist, Tobe Hooper, or really Steven Spielberg, had the mom return to the kitchen with all the chairs suddenly arranged and stacked. In The Sixth Sense, M. Night Shyamalan had Toni Collette walk into a different room to do the laundry, and without cutting, return to the kitchen with Cole to find, all the cupboards are open. And I love it when horror movies do this, because it means some PA had to go in there and like move a whole bunch of stuff around. Jen finds this doctor, and he's wearing early 20th century medical gowns. Now, this guy's described as the doctor in the credits. He's played by Scott Butler, and he says this: an inconvenient woman. That could mean a lot of things. He drowns her. So this is all part of a new invented backstory for the character of Jennifer Kale. I feel like this doctor might have like killed a patient or just done something unethical, and Jen, as like someone else who worked with him, his assistant, his druggist, another doctor, she caught him doing this, maybe told the authorities the truth or threatened to tell the authorities, and now that he would be facing the consequences, he takes out his wrath on her. But Jen Jen later claims that this, whatever happened here, resulted in her being bound, and that this doctor stole her power. So I'm curious to know more about this doctor. Is he still around somewhere as a sorcerer? We obviously already have a medical doctor in the MCU turned sorcerer in Stephen Strange, but hey, this could be a pretty fun backstory for Dr. Nicodemus West, Michael Stuhlbarg. Hey, I'm always trying to get Michael Stuhlbarg back in the MCU. I'm a Stuhlbarg stan. Restore the stool. Agatha and Lilia pass a ghost girl in the foreground, which is another visual horror trope. Remember M. Night Shyamalan in The Sixth Sense had the bathrobe woman ghost past Cole in the foreground when he was in the bathroom. But this girl is a younger version of Lilia, according to the credits, played by Chloe Camp, and she asks in Italian, so the Italian word for see is very similar to the Spanish word for to see, ver. And I should correct last week's breakdown where I said that Rio's repeated te veo is I see you present tense, when she was really speaking in future tense, I'll see you. But I think it's still worth pointing out that for both of these witches, this whole idea of sight and divination is kind of like equally multidisciplinary. Lilia follows her ghostly younger self into this old house that's overgrown with weeds. So between Lorna's fire, Jen's doctor's water, and this earthly house, we're kind of seeing three ways witches were persecuted: burned, drowned, buried alive. They all kind of take these different elemental forms. Lilia sees this old rotting woman who suddenly looks up at her while the shadow of death creeps up behind her. This imagery is very similar to the nun in the way that the nun would just kind of move via shadow, right? Very creepy. The credits describe this woman as Lilia's maestra, which means teacher. She's played by Laura Baccialetti. I wonder if this could have been a witch who taught Lilia her witchcraft at a younger age. Agatha finds Lilia speaking in Italian. So there was an Italian plague from 1629 to 1631, which was part of the larger Black Death from the previous centuries. So if Lilia is a 450-year-old Sicilian witch, this would have been something that she lived through. So they add the ingredients to form the antidote. Teen gets it all boiling using a sous vide, saying that his dad loves this. His dad, along with the mention of his mother, Rebecca Kaplan, seeing Lorna Wu's final concert. And now this mention of his dad would be a reference to Jeff Kaplan. It's just kind of interesting how the parents keep coming up. Jen tells Teen to stir clockwise, and he doesn't know what clockwise means. Apparently schools are now removing clocks from classrooms because Gen Z and Gen Alpha kids can't tell time on analog clocks. But later this season, Agatha and Teen are going to be in an interesting location with ceiling lights that form the shape of an analog clock. Since Agatha was the last to drink her wine, her hallucination of her greatest fear comes a bit later, and she hears a baby crying, and she follows the sound to a baby basket and pulls back the blanket to reveal the Darkhold. So one wonders if this is like a metaphorical nightmare for Agatha's sacrifice of her son Nicholas Scratch to gain the Darkhold, or if this is literally how it happened for her. Like she made this deal with whomever, either the Darkhold's author Cathan, or maybe with Mephisto, and then she woke up in the night to the sound of her baby Nikki crying and went to him, but found instead this Book of the Damned. Do you think that Agatha knew that her son would have been taken when she made that deal? There's another cool practical transition here that's pretty easy to miss. As Catherine Hahn turns away from the kitchen sink, the blue aquatic lighting of the kitchen fades away. In the shot, the lighting shifts, and without cutting, the camera dollies back, and next when we see that kitchen island in the background, the other actors have discreetly cleared the set. But then after Agatha reacts to the book, the lighting shifts again, and the actors have all returned. But this whole moment of like a mother going to what she thinks is going to be her baby is taken directly from Roman Polanski's shot in Rosemary's Baby, when Rosemary confronts the Satanist cult, but is suddenly transfixed by her baby and slowly pulls back the curtain to see...
What have you done to it? What have you done to its eyes?
Those vocals of a woman wailing totally inspired the Lopez's music of the closing credits of every episode of WandaVision. After Agatha returns from her Darkhold hallucination, the first person to talk to her is Teen.
What did you see? Nothing.
I think he knows what she saw. So they have to use a strand of each of their hair for the brew, which recalls Agatha using Wanda's hair to open the memory journey in WandaVision episode 8, and Doctor Strange plucking a strand of Thor's hair to locate Odin in Ragnarok, and Strange, I think, even using Peter Parker's hair for the memory spell in Spider-Man No Way Home. Agatha reassures Jen,
They can take your power, Jen.
Jen remembers they need blood from the unpoisoned, and without hesitation, Agatha slices Teen's palm. They drink the potion. With 10 seconds left, they pass the potion like a fire brigade down to Sharon, and the oven pops open.
That happened to a friend of mine once. She had a lovely house too.
Obviously referencing the witch from the Grimm brothers fairy tale of Hansel and Gretel, the kids who shoved that witch into an oven. But the floodwaters rush in. Now behind the scenes footage shows that they actually flooded this set, and that's really cool because actors actually get paid more if they get wet enough in a scene to be visibly dripping. According to our colleague Joanna Robinson, the cast and crew of Lost call this a wet bump because it was often raining on that set, but sometimes it was just humid and drizzling or wet from a recent rain shower. So the standard for a wet bump in your pay on that day is that you must be visibly dripping, and that's why the water only comes up to these actors' knees, I suspect. Agatha doesn't want to save Sharon, but she reluctantly doubles back to help them move her, and when she gets into the oven, notice she cackles like a pirate. So the witches glide down this practical water slide, which seems like a direct homage to the Goonies, where Richard Donner's team built a whole winding water slide on the Warner Brothers' massive and historic Stage 16 soundstage in Burbank, which they actually flooded and used for the massive pirate ship. And it seems like they used the stunt performers to do the actual sliding because they smack into each other pretty hard, but notice they rotate the camera in this overhead shot, and they must have hit a cut there because when the camera angles up, now we see our actors standing up, and they are damp and they are muddy, but notice they are not dripping. No wet bump. The aspect ratio also condenses back to widescreen. The teen reveals.
Sharon's dead.
Who's Sharon?
Ha, a solid callback. But it also shows that Agatha is still so solidly unsure of her reality, still in Wanda's trance, that she cannot shake what this woman was to her through Wanda's eyes. Over the credits play, the yeah yeahs heads will roll. For a complete breakdown of all the imagery stitched together by the design team Perception, check out last week's breakdown. Hey, a huge thanks to Brandon Barrick and Gina Ippolito for their help researching and writing this breakdown. Comment down below with your thoughts. Follow me at EA Voss. Subscribe to all 3 channels of the New Rockstars Network for breakdowns and news coverage of everything you love. New Rockstars, The Deep Dive, and The Break Room, where every Thursday at 11 a.m. we will be live streaming taking your questions, so subscribe to The Break Room and join the conversation there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.